Hello everyone, welcome, nice to see you. I hope I am live and you can hear me and everything is working. It was a bit spontaneous to start this stream here, but somebody suggested I was like working on my next games video today, all day basically, till shortly before we started here. And somebody suggested, hey, wouldn't it be cool? I thought about making a live stream today, and now it's already pretty late here for me, but maybe we can have like a little bit of fun. And somebody, as said, suggested maybe a little, I don't know, Lord of the Rings special, Halloween special kind of thing where we talk about, I don't know, this most, let's call them spooky creatures of the Lord of the Rings universe, and have a good time together. So here I am, and I don't know, hope you have you have good questions. I guess the classics for a stream like this, we see one in the background already, one of the Oathbreakers from Return of the King and Friends. Then we have, I don't know, I also had a thumbnail where there was a Watcher in the water, which is also kind of a classic. And yeah, let me just look at chat. Scariest place in the Legendarium. Also welcome everybody. Didn't say hello. Cola Valkyrie, nice you couldn't make it today. As I say, usually at work. Yeah, well, also like, lol, the Christmas have begun. Yeah, that's true. Nice to see you. Dylan and Time Lord guy. Spooky. Citizens, welcome. Mari also welcome. And Tirza also. Well, it is not yet happy Halloween. I mean, somewhere in the world could be, I'm not sure if it could be Halloween somewhere already. In theory, I guess. At least in Australia, it's already the 31st of October, so I guess that counts. And I have even some viewers from around this time zone, so shoutouts to them. But yeah, I called it pre-Halloween law thing. I don't know. You know, I thought, I guess most people are busy tomorrow anyway, so I thought, why not do it a day before and do the stream today? So here I am. And we have to figure things out. So be spooky if you feel it. Okay, good one. Good to know. Also, kind of interestingly, just as a side note, I just noticed that on my... Oh, I have double sound here. Where was I going with this sentence? Oh yeah, now I know why it existed actually in the first place. The Twitch channel, that's why I want to go with a sentence. The Twitch channel of mine, the English one, twitch.tv/thephilosophers games, has it's what is it called? Affiliate anniversary today. Didn't know that. November the 1st is Dia de los Muertos. That's cool. Okay, so let's go into question and stuff to discuss. I mean, in theory, we could just talk about the Oathbreakers if we can't come up with anything. Dylan already had a question. Well, a question small season themed. What is the scariest place in the Legendarium? That's a really good question, I think, already. First of all, it would allow us, in theory, to get out to bring out the map. I guess, okay, one of the most scariest... Okay, I just now seeing the question in front of me. Hey Mark, nice to see you. Guten Abend auch dir. And the Veronica fan. Yeah, exactly. You already spoiled it. But of course, it has to be first age map. And here we have it, Nan Dungorthep. That is where, we know the story, Melian the Maya. Let me see if I have a picture of Melian. Of course I have. Shouts to Kimberly80 already. I search for Kimberly instead of for Melian. We need some production. But it's not. That's Kirdan, by the way. In case you wonder who's that guy, that's that's Kirdan. Good question. Which one do we take? I like this one. She has some good old Kimberly always with her fantastic expressions in her artworks. That's a beautiful art. So yeah, Melian, as we know from the lore, she lived here in Dorias with Thingol, and she created the Girdle of Melian, and it kind of protected this realm from the powers of outside. And here in the north, we have somewhere a dude called Morgos. I have to think about if I said the name right, because all day I worked on a different franchise video, so I was kind of confused for a moment. Morgos, or and his fortress, Angband, and basically his evil power spread forward further and further. And here in this place, there's also a mountain range called the Eret Gorgoros, the Mountains of Horror, I think. I think that when it comes, if Nan Dungorthep is not the scariest place, then these mountains are. Because there, the mother of Shelob, Ungoliant, lived with its breed, you could say. And Shelob was one of the many children of Ungoliant. And they lived there, and the only thing we know is that Beren went through these mountains at some point to get down here to Doria. So he went first of all to Eret Gorgoros, then through Nan Dungorthep to enter there. And he could cross the girdle because his fate was greater than the power of Melian. And it's very, very interesting detail-wise, but Tolkien kind of describes these places as the how to say it, the most terrible places in existence in Middle Earth, something like that. Can maybe look into the Silmarillion as soon as I find the page. Translation, by the way, is Valley of Dreadful Death. Just in case you wondered, what does this even mean? Well, okay, it's a very Yeah, it traumatized Beren so much he refused to speak about what he saw there. I don't know how he even got through this, but it kind of speaks for him, I think. Yeah, also somebody asked about Helm Hammerhand. Cola did it, Cola Valkyrie. Yeah, that's also a good story for a special like this, so I might look into this. The Grimrist, welcome. The Silmarillion, finally. Let me just, I'm all fully prepared, I have to admit. Like I said, I was working on my other video pretty much the whole day. Let's see. With their whips of flame, they smote asunder the webs of Ungoliant, and she quailed and turned to flight, bleaching black vapors to cover her. And fleeing from the north, she went down into Beleriand and dwelt beneath Eret Gorgoros in the dark valley that was after called Nandungorthep, the valley of dreadful death, because of the horror that she bred there. For other foul creatures of spider form had dwelt there since the days of the delving of Angband, and she mated with them and devoured them. And even after Ungoliant herself departed and went whither she would into the forgotten south of the world, and went whither. Okay, I just lost the line. Whatever. Her offspring abode there and wove their hideous webs. Of the fate of Ungoliant no tale tells. Yet some have said that she ended long ago, when in her uttermost famine she devoured herself at last. And yeah, what I described there with the girdle of Melian, Nandungorthep, no, one line, between Mindeb and the upper waters of Escalduin lay the no-land of Nandungorthep, and that region was filled with fear, for upon its one side the power of Melian fenced the north march of Dorias, but upon the other side the sheer precipice, however this is pronounced. Interestingly, this word exists in Elden Ring, which I'm currently working a video on as well. I always wonder how it's pronounced, but I don't know. It's just written there. Precipice, okay, I kind of guessed it right. Of Eret Gorgoros, mountain of terror, fell down from high Dorthonion. Well, not lore content though. Currently working on a guide about the randomizer. So it's more, well, here's a randomizer with 12 million settings, and I explain what they all do. Thank you, Jack, on the Twitch chat. Where was I, chat? Ah, yeah, terror from the all living things. Let me see. Film Ravens, Deadly Gloom, and there's. Maybe we go there. Thither, as was earlier told, Ungoliant had fled from the whips of the Balrogs, and there she dwelt a while, filling the ravines with her deadly gloom. And there still, when she had passed away, her foul offspring lurked and wove their evil nets, and their thin waters that spilled from Eret Gorgoros were defiled and perilous to drink, for the hearts of those that tasted them were filled with shadows of madness and despair. All living things else shunned that land, and the Noldor would pass through Nandungorthep only at great need, by paths near to the borders of Dorias and furthest from the haunted hills. That way was made long before the time Morgoth returned to Middle-earth, and if if one fared upon it, he came eastward to Escalduin, where he still stood in the days of the siege, the stone bridge of... Okay, that's a good question. Is this Jantjauer or is this Landlauer? Is this an I or is this an L? Okay, I have to look this up. I'm not 100% sure how it's pronounced. No, it's an I. Interesting. The bridge of Jantjauer. I'm not sure if this is a diphthong. How was it with the I in a Quenya name? Or is it Sindarin anyway? Interesting name. Never occurred to me. Thence he passed through Dordinen, the Silent Land, and crossing the Arosiach, which signifies the fords of Aros, came to the north marches of Beleriand, where dwelt the sons of Feanor, and so on and so forth. So, yeah. Let me see if we find there's another mention of Nandungorthep in the Silmarillion, when Arezel went through there. Then Arezel turned back and sought the dangerous road between the haunted valleys of Eret Gorgoros, we have heard about this a moment ago, and the north fences of Dorias. And as they drew near to the evil region of Nandungorthep, the riders became enmeshed in shadows, and Arezel strayed from her companions and was lost. They sought long for her in vain, fearing that she had been ensnared or had drunk from the poisoned streams of that land. But the fell creatures of Ungoliant that dwelt in the ravines were aroused and pursued them, and they hardly escaped with their lives. When at last they returned and their tale was told, there was great sorrow in Gondolin, and Turgon, Arezel's brother, sat long alone, enduring grief and anger and silence. But Arezel, having sought in vain for her companions, rode on, for she was fearless and hardy of heart, and as were all the children of Finwë. And she held on her way, and crossing Escalduin and Aros came to the land of Himlad between Aros and Kelon, where Keligorm and Curufin dwelt in those days before the breaking of the siege of Angband. At that time they were from home, riding with Caranthir east in Sargelion. But the people of Keligorm welcomed her and bade her stay among them with honor until their lord's return. Therefore a while she was content and had great joy in wandering free in the woodlands. But as the year lengthened and Keligorm did not return, she became restless again and took riding alone ever further abroad, seeking for new paths and untrodden glades. And from here, the story goes that she goes to Nan Elmoth, and there she meets a dark elf named Eol. Well, kind of interesting story. Not sure if we have any other thing. No, that's one more mention, but it's not that interesting. Nan Elmoth is, by the way, here. Kelon. Himring is here, where the fortress of those are. And the other stuff is somewhere here in between. Need a map to give you the exact data. Dunharrow. Welcome, Adam. Nice to see you. So, reading all of this, I kind of lost a bit track of chat. I'm sorry for that, as always. So, kind of interesting. And they became known as Eret Gorgoros, the Mountains of Terror, and none dared to thither or pass nigh them. There life and light were strangled, and there all waters were poisoned. Can't find the... Demons of Terror, Mountains of Terror, on there to go thither. We had this. Phantoms of Terror, by the way. Somebody asked about the dead marshes and phantoms. The forest under Nightshade. Let me just go one sentence back. Then Morgoth pursued his people to the death until few remained, and all the forest of the northward slopes of that land was turned little by little into a region of such dread and dark enchantment that even the orcs would not enter it unless need drove them, and it was called Delduath and Tower Nufuin, the forest under Nightshade. The trees that grew there after the burning were black and grim, and their roots were tangled, groping in the dark like claws, and those who strayed among them became lost and blind, and were strangled or pursued by to madness by phantoms of terror. Okay, I found the place also where Beren don't want to talk about this. I just was searching for it. In time of winter and snow, he forsook the land and grave of his father, Barahir, and climbing into the high regions of Gorgoroth, the Mountains of Terror, he discreet? I have to look this up, unfortunately. Descry, okay. He descry afar the land of Doriath. There it was put into his heart that he would go down into the hidden kingdom, where no mortal foot had yet trodden. Terrible was his southward journey. Sheer were the precipices of Eret Gorgoroth, and beneath their feet were shadows that were laid before the rising of the moon. Beyond lay the wilderness of Dangorthep, where the sorcery of Sauron and the power of Melian came together, and horror and madness walked. There spiders of the fell race of Ungoliant abode, spinning their unseen webs in which all living things were snared, and monsters wandered there that were born in the long dark, before the sun, hunting silently with many eyes. No food for elves or men was there in that haunted land, but death only. That journey is not accounted least among the great deeds of Beren, but he spoke of it to no one after, lest the horror return into his mind. And none know how he found a way, and so came by paths that no man or elf else ever dared to tread to the borders of Doriath. And he passed through the mazes of Melian, that Melian wove about the kingdom of Thingol, even as she had foretold, for a great doom lay upon him. So, yeah, it's kind of an interesting... I really like the story, or this little section here. Like, it's a place so terrible. He doesn't want to remember it, be remembered at it. It is Nobody knows how he even did this. It's kind of amazing that Beren somehow went through this horrible place with poison water, unspeakable horrors walking there. I think it's one of the few instances where Tolkien uses the word monsters wandered there. Like, I can't recount many sections in his text where he actually uses this word. So very fascinating. Sorry for the very long dive here into all of this here, but it was a very fascinating read, to be honest. So, chat, I'm a bit sorry. You also had some other suggestions of places you want to discuss. So previously, somebody suggested the story of Helm Hammerhand. We can maybe look into this and read a bit of this stuff. Also, Dunharrow was mentioned, which is behind Dunharrow, where the Oath Breakers live. Where Dunharrow and the Phantoms in the Dead Marshes are. A lot of gets to ghosts. Yes, pretty much. The Barrow Downs, there the Barrow Whites live. That's also kind of a classic. Yeah, in case of the Oathbreakers, I mean, we have the Oathbreaker, Mr. Oathbreaker Man. Here he is. We have him here in the thumbnail of the stream. So in this regard, let me just see if I can. Let me try this here. Maybe this helps me a bit getting production and my ability to read chat a bit in line. I think Beren going through such horrid place was a direct representation of his own experience in war, maybe. There is some possibility for sure. But I think, I don't know. In classic mythology, or sometimes have these horrible places that somebody has to cross on his quest. So hard to tell. So what are we going to read next in the suggested things here, chat? I hope nobody is angry at me, but I just kind of ignore what he wrote. Cole of Valkyrie, for a moment ago, wrote about Helm Hammerhand. Dead Marsh is also good, interesting stuff. We looked into some streams ago, I think, already in the Dead Marshes, but so, chat, what do you want to do first? Helm Hammerhand or I mean, the Helm was mentioned stuff a moment before. So we go there. Just enjoying hearing your voice. Thanks, much appreciated. So let's start with Helm. So yeah, in the War of the Rohirrim film, they kind of, I don't know, have an interesting interpretation of these events. Hey, Aris, nice to see you, and also, how the name is pronounced. R10 Eagle Shot. Favorite story is Turin. Yeah, that's also, the Turin story is also pretty awesome. I really like the story of Beren though as well. So, Helm Hammerhand, right? Soon afterwards, a long winter began, and Rohan lay under snow for nearly 5 months, November to March 2958 to 2758 to 2759. It's easier. Both the Rohirrim and their foes suffered grievously in the cold, and in the dearth, I think it's pronounced dearth, that lasted longer. In Helm's Deep there was a great hunger after Yule, and being in despair against the king's counsel, Hama, his younger son, led men out on a sortie and foray, and they were lost in the snow. Helm grew fierce and gaunt for famine and grief, and the dread of him alone was worth many men in the defense of the burg, or burg. He would go out by himself clad in white, and stalk like a snow troll into the camps of his enemies, and slay many men with his hands. It was believed that if he bore no weapon would bite on him. The Dunlending said that if he could find no food, he ate men. That tale lasted long in Dunland. Helm had a great horn, and soon it was marked that before he sallied forth, and he would blow a blast upon it that echoed in the deep. And then so great a fear fell on his enemies that instead of gathering to take him or kill him, they fled away down the combe. However, this is pronounced. One night men heard the horn blowing, but Helm did not return. In the morning there came a sun gleam, the first for long days, and they saw a white figure standing still on the dike, alone, for none of the Dunlendings dared come near. There stood Helm, dead as a stone, but his knees were unbent. Yet men said that the horn was still heard at times in the deep, and the race of Helm would walk among the foes of Rohan and kill men with fear. There we have the legend. Okay, it's very interesting. Helm had great horn, and marked. No, wrong line. The Dunlending said that if he could find no food, he ate men. That tale lasted long in Dunland. It became like a legend among the Dunlendings even. I like how Tolkien kind of puts a little bit into this, the idea how mythology is created, how like a mythologic tale of a place is kind of born. There might be some truth to it, but who knows what part of it is true. But it's very interesting. And then also, one night men heard the horn, but Helm did not return, and so on and so forth. Yet men said that the horn was still heard at times in the deep, and the race of Helm would walk among the foes of Rohan and kill men with fear. I like the scary thumbnail, thank you. I thought, yeah, maybe we have to go all out on the thumbnail. Yeah, like the boogeyman. Yeah, kind of. I became sort of a King Arthur character in Rohan. It's definitely interesting. I like the ending of the War of the Rohirrim anime film thing is quite a bit different than what is actually happening in the books. That's a bit unfortunate, I think. I really like the idea that they kind of combine different events that happen at the same time, and this kind of helps how this myth is created, without kind of underselling that Helm Hammerhand was definitely a powerful warrior fighter. You could argue that the decisions he made were definitely questionable, but it's interesting that Tolkien named mountains of Mirkwood same after Sauron's shadow fell on the forest. Good that I, in good preparation, already have my atlas here. That's an interesting observation, Mari. So the mountains you, I think, talk about. Let me just get the map out. That's actually a really interesting observation, to be honest. You see these mountains here. No, you don't see them because I forgot to switch the scene. These mountains here, this mountain range. Here is Erebor. Here is Dale. Here somewhere lives Thranduil, the lake town, or Escaros, and so on. Dol Guldur. And here is like a mountain range. This path, somewhere here is this magical path, and so on, leads over the river and whatnot. However, there's this mountain range here, and this mountain range is called Imin nu Fuin. Translates to Mountains of Mirkwood. But it's kind of interesting that, as Mari suggests, that the mountains potentially must have been named differently. Because the mountain, the forest Mirkwood was not always called Mirkwood, but at some point it was called Greenwood the Great. Maybe try to look something up here if we find some information. The earlier name is Emin Duer. Duer, well, that's a hard to say word because it's one syllable. So the U and the I is spelled D-U-I-R. Duer. Something like this. Really hard to say. Because U and the I must be a diphthong. Emin Duer. Something like this. In Sindarin, it means dark mountains. The name was given because the dense growth of trees on their slopes, and did not have evil connotations of darkness. Interestingly, the Emin nu Fuin translates to mountains under night, actually. But yeah, I guess the change in tone kind of fits that Mirkwood then also was kind of named differently. Kind of an interesting detail for sure. Spooky map time, yeah, it's a really spooky map here. So we talked about Helm Hammerhand. I don't have many artworks for Helm, I think. Do I have something? Nope. I don't have any anime screenshots available right now. So we are so tough luck here. I have a film screenshot of the statue that appears in, I would assume, Two Towers. But yeah, the statue of Helm Hammerhand is actually here. I think what is interesting, maybe do I have an anime screenshot, maybe from the trailers or something? I don't know, chat. I think I have one. The only one I have. When did War of the Rohirrim come out? Was it last year, chat? 2024? Yes, 3rd December 2024. Here, I have it. I never noticed, but if you look, especially with he has a helmet, the statue, but he looks very similar to the statue. So even when it comes to how Helm Hammerhand looks, they try to kind of orient there with the Peter Jackson impression. Thank you, chat. In terms of Angband, that place wouldn't be scary. Yeah, it's definitely. Like Angband is like somebody says, literally a kind of hell or underworldish place. Definitely not a nice place. But yeah, I never noticed this now in direct comparison. Also, in theory, for all the people curious, I also have chat. Just have to move it a bit. Might be that chat at some point stops working, so there's that. But yeah, definitely interesting details. So Helm Hammerhand also, I think this little phantom race idea is kind of interesting. What was the other story? We have the Oathbreakers still. Let me see if I can find the Oathbreaker screenshot. Well, the question is not if, the question is when I find it. So I don't want to keep you waiting for too long. But as you can imagine, production is not always that easy. Here we have the Oathbreakers. So the Oathbreaker story is my niece and nephew, and I laughed a lot about his uncanny strength, that for sure. Hey, amazing bad boy, nice to see you. We just discussed when during the introduction of the stream. Also, Two Kings, Mikey, thank you for wishing me. It's like 8 minutes ago. I didn't notice what was going on in the other chat. My mistake. But thank you for your well wishes, I think you say, for my affiliate anniversary in the Twitch chat. Themed stream, yeah. We discussed at the beginning of the stream, that's where I wanted to go with the sentence, that you, in your time zone, it's basically already Halloween, so at least the day is correct. I guess you still have some time until the spooky celebration starts, but yeah. I thought we do it today, so you have tomorrow to focus on whatever you do on Halloween. I have to say, in my country, Halloween is actually, for my when I was younger, was not really celebrated. Correct, spooky Halloween day, nice. So I'm kind of in German we say Muffel. I'm a Halloween Muffel, kind of. So I think it's a pretty cool idea, and I can imagine that people and kids really love that day. It was never much of a thing. It just, I don't know, became bigger and bigger due to, I don't know, the cultural influence of the English-speaking countries, the United States, UK, and so on. Yeah, exactly. The Walpurgisnacht, of course. Germany, that's maybe a comparison. I think, aren't they also distant, somehow related? I don't know. My Halloween lore itself is not that great. But let's talk about the oath breakers. Here. If we go on the map, I don't have a good map for this actually, or we have to zoom in. Well, it's a bit difficult to zoom. We can't see much anyway. So we have the stone of Erech. That's here. And it's kind of interesting how this stone is actually a very interesting artifact when it comes to the writing history. Then we have Edoras. And then somewhere here must be... Let me just look it up before I tell you something not correct. But it should be Dunharrow, which was also, somebody mentioned Dunharrow, which of course has the pass. Oh, it's more in the... Is it more in the west? No, it's actually closer to Edoras. It's here. Dunharrow is somewhere here, according to Karen Wynne Fonstead. Kind of here in the middle. A bit difficult to explain. So yeah, Dunharrow, the Oathbreaker. So what is interesting about this? Let's start with Erech. There's in very early writings of Tolkien, in Erech stood actually a tower, and Tolkien thought about that one of the Palantiri is in it. So originally, some of the Palantiri is actually what was planned to be here. That, of course, never came to be, but I think it's a very interesting detail. So the story was a bit different, and so on and so forth. It was there's a big stone in Erech as a kind of a, I don't know, kind of reminiscent of this original idea. And yeah, the origin story of that, I'll try to kind of find the source for it. Oh, it's actually in Lord of the Rings. Okay, will be a bit tough to find. Well, I know the chapter though. It is a chapter, The Passing of the Great Company. Thus spoke Malbes the seer in the days of Arvedui, last king at Fornos, said Aragorn. Over the land there lies a long shadow, westward reaching wings of darkness. The tower trembles to the tombs of kings. Doom approaches, the dead awaken. For the hour is come for the oath-breakers. At the stone of Erech they shall stand again, and hear there a horn in the hills ringing. Whose shall the horn be? Who shall call them from the great twilight, the forgotten people, the heir of him to whom the oath they swore? From the north shall he come, need shall drive him. He shall pass the door to the paths of the dead. That we shall know if ever we come to Erech, said Aragorn, but the oath that they broke was to fight against Sauron, and they must fight therefore, if they are to fulfill it. For at Erech there stands yet a black stone, here we also get the color of the stone, that was brought. It was set from Numenor by Isildur, and it was set upon a hill, and upon let me read again. And it was set upon a hill, and upon it the king of the mountains swore allegiance to him in the beginning of the realm of Gondor. But when Sauron returned and grew in might again, Isildur summoned the men of the mountains to fulfill their oath, and they would not, for they had worshipped Sauron in the dark years. Then Isildur said to the king, Thou shalt be the last king, and if the west prove mightier than thy black master, this curse I lay upon thee and thy folk, to rest never until your oath is fulfilled. For this war will last through years uncounted, and you shall be summoned once again ere the end. And they fled before the wrath of Isildur, and did not dare to go forth to war on Sauron's part, and they hid themselves in secret places in the mountains, and had no dealings with other men, but slowly dwindled in the barren hills, and the terror of the sleepless dead lies about the hill of Erech, and all places where that people lingered. But that way I must go, since there are none living to help me. So very cool how Tolkien wrote this, in my opinion. Long had the terror of the dead lain upon that hill, and upon the empty fields about it, for upon the top stood a black stone, round as a great globe, the height of a man, though its half was buried in the ground. Unearthly it looked, and though it had fallen as though it had fallen from the sky, as some believed, but those who remembered still the lore of Westerners told that it had been brought out of the ruin of Numenor and there set by Isildur at his landing. None of the people of the valley dared to approach it, nor would they dwell near, for they said that it was a trysting place. Let me just look up this word. Sometimes not helping, not being a native speaker. Treffpunkt in German. Of the shadow men, and there they would gather in times of fear, thronging round the stone and whispering. To that stone the company came and halted in the dead of night. Then Elrohir, son of Elrond, gave to Aragorn a silver horn, and he blew upon it, and it seemed to those that stood near that they heard this sound of answering horns, as if it was an echo in deep caves far away. No other sound they heard, and yet they were aware of great host gathered all about the hill on which they stood, and a chill wind, like a breath of ghosts, came down from the mountains. But Aragorn dismounted. Standing by the stone, he cried in a great voice, "Oathbreakers, why have ye come?" Pretty cool thing here. Do you think, Chris? I don't think, other than that they were from the deep mines of Moria. See the Watcher, older than the Balrog. Hard to tell. We might talk about the Watcher in a moment as well. But let's stay here. But to answer the question, I think some people and make the connection that the Watcher in the water might be distantly related to the, let's call it, group of creatures that Gandalf saw in the underground, gnawing at the world, or at the depths of the world, known as the... What are they called? The word finding is not there. I just can't come up with a word. It lies on my tongue, as you say. From New Zealand, yeah. That's really so far away. Nameless things, thank you. Yes, the nameless things. Maybe... I don't have a proof for this. It's just a thought that it might have to do with these weird creatures. That would kind of fit to, I don't know, something is connected to the depths in Moria. It's from there. Yeah, forgot the name of the nameless things. Happens to the best. It's pretty ironic in a way. But yeah, let us move back for a moment to our good old friends, the Oathbreakers. Wouldn't say they're good old friends, but you know what I mean. It's like a really classic topic. And I have to find the right scene here. Yeah, that's also kind of my reasoning. They're in the same part of the world. I mean, the only thing that's kind of strange is there is some implication that the nameless thing has an interest in the ring. Maybe because it is a servant of Sauron in a way. If it is, it's strange that Gandalf says that not even Sauron knows about the nameless things. That's a bit strange, I guess. Yeah, it's really a spooky chapter, the passing of the Grey Company, for sure. So kind of fitting in my opinion. But yeah, what is interesting about is it really is there is. I'm not sure if I find the scene. What is the name of the king? It is. Is it Brego? It's one of the kings of Brego. No, it's Baldur. It's his son, I think. Right? I have to search for a moment, chat, sorry. I think I found it. Let's read another section from there, which is also kind of scary, which missing in the films as well. There's an interesting lore detail here, and Tolkien, for whatever reason, wrote also something about this man here that is found. So in the book, when they are going through the Oathbreakers' territory, the paths of the dead, they find somewhere down there the remains of a man. So time unreckoned passed until Gimli saw a sight that he was ever afterwards lost to recall. The road was wide as far as he could judge, but now the company came suddenly into a great empty space, and there were no longer any walls upon either side. The dread was so heavy on him that he could hardly walk. Away to the left, something glittered in the gloom as Aragorn's torch drew near. Then Aragorn halted and went to look what it might be. Does he feel no fear, muttered the dwarf. In any other cave, Gimli, Glóin's son, would have been the first to run to the gleam of gold, but not here. Let it lie. Nonetheless, he drew near and saw Aragorn kneeling, while Elladan held aloft both torches. Before him were the bones of a mighty man. He had been clad in mail, and still his harness lay there whole, for the cavern's air was as dry as dust, and his okay, I have to look up the word pronunciation. Sometimes Hauberk, I think it's pronounced, and his hauberk was gilded. His belt was of gold and garnets, and rich with gold was the helm upon his bony head face, downwards on the floor. He had fallen near the far wall of the cave, and now could be seen, and before him stood a stony door closed fast. His finger bones were still clawing at the cracks. A notched and broken sword lay by him, as if he had hewn at the rock in his last despair. Aragorn did not touch him, But after gazing silently for a while, he rose and cited, "Hither shall the flowers of Silmarillion come never unto world's end," he murmured. 9 mounds and 7 there are now green with grass, and though all the long years he has lain at the door that he could not unlock. Whither does it lead? Why would he pass? None shall ever know, for that is not my errand, he cried, turning back and speaking to the whispering darkness behind. Keep your hoards and your secrets hidden in the accursed years. Speed only, we ask. Let us pass and then come. I summon you to the stone of Erech. There was no answer, unless it were an utter silence more dreadful than the whispers before, and then a chill blast came in which the torches flickered and went out, and could not be rekindled. Of the time that followed, 1 hour or many, Gimli remembered little. The others pressed on, but he was ever hindmost, pursued by a groping horror that seemed always just about to seize him, and a rumor came after him like the shadow sound of many feet. So what is interesting, there is the word bones here in my digital version. I can click on it, and there is a hint. Edit. Well, there are multiple hints actually added. 2512 to 2570, 2512, 2570. We have here the list of the kings. The first one is of course Eorl the Young, first king of Rohan. And the second king is Brego, and here we have also the note in his text. Brego, he drove the enemy out of the wold, and Rohan was not attacked again for many years. In 2569 he completed the great hall of Meduseld. So Brego, the second king, built Meduseld. At the feast his son Baldur vowed that he would tread the path of the dead and did not return. Brego died of grief the next year. So that is one of the notes. Then later, I think it's a bit later in the book. Yeah, 10 pages later, I assume at least. Yeah. We have a dialogue of Theoden here. "No man knows," said Theoden. Let me just think. But no one answered until Eomer spoke. We do not know, and our hearts are heavy," he said. "But as for the path of the dead, you have just say I speak no words of ill omen. The road that we have climbed is the approach to the door, yonder in the dim hold. But what lies beyond, I know," said Theoden. "Yet ancient legend, now seldom spoken, has somewhat to report. If these old tales speak true, that have came down from father to son in the house of Eorl, then the door of the Drimborberg," I'm not sure if this is Old English, then it would be, I could imagine it's anglicized, so Drimborberg. I'm not sure. "Leads to a secret way that goes beneath the mountains to some forgotten end, but none have ever ventured to search its secret since Baldur, son of Brego, passed the door and was never seen among men again. A rash vow he spoke as he drained the horn at the feast which Brego made to hollow new-built Meduseld, and he came never to the high seat of which he was the heir." So we have another thing there. Let me just see if we find more information about this, also how it's pronounced. The name translate in Old English. Yeah, it's really Dwimor. Okay, the mountain should not be Berg, but Björg. Something like this. I'm not sure how the G is pronounced here in this case. But it means phantom mountain or haunted mountain, interestingly. I wonder if the name Baldur is inspired by the Norse god Balder. Maybe. But I think that's... I'm not sure. The stories aren't... stories might be a bit different, I think. But you might be right. There could be... Also, interesting note, in the Lord of the Rings, it's not directly confirmed that it's Baldur in this section. In this bones section, where Aragorn finds the corpse. That's not directly confirmed, but it's heavily implied that it must be Baldur. Baldur, excuse me. And in the it seems like, according to the wiki page here, we might have to look deeper into this, but in the history of Middle Earth book, The War of the Ring, the War of the Ring, there in early drafts of this passage, Aragorn actually recognizes Baldur and says, "Here lies Baldur, son of Brego." Interestingly. And there's another interesting section which I now have to find. So in the companion of the Reader's Companion, the men of darkness built temples, some of great size, usually surrounded by dark trees, often in caverns, natural delved. In secret valleys of mountain regions, such as the dreadful halls and passages under the haunted mountain, we had the name there, beyond the dark door, the gate of the dead in Dunharrow, the special, I read this terribly, to be honest, such as the dreadful halls and passages under the mountains beyond the dark door in Dunharrow. The special horror of the closed door before which the skeleton of Baldur was found was probably due to the fact that the door was the entrance to an evil temple hall to which Baldur had come, probably without opposition up to that point. But the door was shut in his face, and enemies that had followed him silently came up and broke his legs and left him to die in the darkness, unable to find a way out. This actually what is described here, and now it becomes kind of difficult for me to find, I think. If I remember correctly, this is it could be 42. We can read it. Yeah, I think I found it. No. In one issue of Vinyar Tengwa, if I remember correctly, and it would be difficult to find. No, that's wrong for sure. Which Vinyar Tengwa issue was it? Note 6. We try to find it. No, okay, that's wrong. Oh, I found it. At the words, it may, however, have been a tomb, Tolkien abandoned this text and no doubt immediately marked the entire account of Halathirion for deletion. Christopher Tolkien writes, these last words may well signify the precise moment at which the tomb of Lindon... no, that's actually wrong, I think. Okay, I have to search for it, chat. Sorry, I thought it would be here. Maybe this is just the text where... Okay, now I'm a bit... Not that I'm confusing this. But yeah, what we find here is that these hillmen... Is it the right text? Ancient monument of rough stones nearly man-high with flat top stood at the summit of Halathirion. But he at once proceeds to argue strongly that its presence can be no support to the view that the mountain was in some sense hollowed before its use in the oath-taking, since any such ancient object of religious significance could only be erected by the men of darkness corrupted by Morgoth or a servant Sauron, but it may have ever been a tomb. Man, I forgot where it was written. I thought it would be actually there in this book. That makes things complicated, chat. What was the text, chat? I could swear it was in this. It was in this thing. I only remember it was a bit tricky to find. I have to look into my script. Maybe I kind of read this in the past. Or is it in Peoples of Middle-earth? There was an... I could... Where was this written, chat? Last note what Tolkien wrote. What are we looking for? I try to find... There's an interesting note about the men of darkness built temples, some of great size, usually surrounded by dark trees, often in caverns, natural or delved, in secret valleys of mountain regions, such as the dreadful halls and passages under the haunted mountain beyond the dark door, gate of the dead, in Dunharrow. The special horror of the closed door before which the skeleton of Baldur was found was probably due to the fact that the door was the entrance to an evil temple hall, to which Baldur had come probably without opposition up to that point. But the door was shut in his face, and enemies had followed him suddenly, came up and broke his legs and left him to die in the darkness, unable to find any way out. We already read this here. I'm not sure if there was like another note about this. Like this was published in 2001 in the Vinyar Tengwar. I'm not 1% sure when the other book was published. Let's see. 2005 is the other book, so that was the first. Same Baldur. No, it's Baldur. Baldur. I always say in my German community I have somebody whose name is Baldur, or Baldur from the Norse mythology. Or he's named after the famous character from the Norse mythology, and that's why I sometimes say the name wrong, I think. Okay, now I'm kind of curious. Now it's a bit unfortunate. I could swear that everything was in this text here, you know? I think I made a video once about this. I also remember talking to Charles to Geek Zone. I think he hasn't uploaded in some time, but I remember discussing this on Discord or something with him. So there was the one text of that I just wrote, and I could swear there was like another text that kind of was about Balder, but I can't remember where the text where I read this. I think there was more to it. But I can't combine. Maybe I remember it wrong. That's also definitely a possibility. So what I'm currently trying is to check an old script of mine. I think I have not it's not in the video. Ah, man, can't find it. Kind of drives me nuts, when you think I could swear there was something in this direction. I can't remember. It's just too long ago. A bit unfortunate, chat. If you get kind of stuck here. Why did I read this though, chat? Maybe it was exactly this note in combination with the text. But yeah, it's kind of a spooky little tale for sure. I just wish I could remember it. Remember tomorrow in the show. It's always like that, yeah. I have an idea. Hmm. It seems to be just that. So, whatever it is, I thought it would be a bit more conclusive, if that makes sense. I could swear there was like a little bit more information about the worshipping part. Really have to dig deeper into this at some point again to kind of refresh my memory a bit. Sorry that we're a bit stuck here, but it's just such an interesting section. I could swear there is not that much information about it, but I was surprised to find that Tolkien actually wrote something about this. Whatever, chat. Whatever, chat. We need to move on. Sorry for being a bit stuck here. I just could swear there was like a little bit of, like a small tidbit of extra information here and there. Whatever, chat. It's always like that. Yeah, you might be right. I might remember this more clearly the next time. So, we talked about the Oathbreakers, which is a funny topic, by the way. So, yeah, as read in the chapter, the king of a Númenórean king could, and I guess this is also true for a king of Gondor, in this case, Isildur, to if people swear allegiance to him and to help him in war, and then they break their oaths, that's a terrible thing to do in the Tolkien universe. And Eru might have accepted the oath, and also then this had severe consequences for the Oathbreakers when severe consequences when those who took the oath would break it, and as a result, they were cursed, as Isildur did curse them, and this curse became reality, and they were then not able to die and had to wander the world until they fulfill their oaths, which is part of the story of the Lord of the Rings. So in this regard, a very fascinating and little spooky story there. What was the other thing? We talked about Hammerhand, we talked about the Oathbreakers. We briefly had a deep dive into the direction of the Watcher and the Water. There's not much to say about the Watcher and the Water. There's so little information about it. Like, the Nameless Things is a possible theory for that, if that makes sense, chat. But it is basically all. It's basically all that we know. Spooky adjacent question: elf body fading into rustic spirits if they remain in Middle Earth, yet their physical bodies were meant to last forever. Would you say this is to do with Morgoth's ring, residual evil in the world, decay, etc.? Interesting parallels to the invisibility race effects of Sauron's rings. Yeah, that the decay effect for sure had to do with this. So Tolkien had like a book, or had a text, not a book, and there he kind of explains that at some point, if they stay too long in Middle Earth, the elves fade, so they have to leave Middle Earth. And in this case, their spirit consumes their body, and then they become houseless, so without a body. This is kind of the problem. Do you think they invented them for the for Lord of the Rings? That's a good question. Would have to look into the book for it. Let me see, which History of Middle-earth book is this? Was it Jewels, The War? That is War of the Ring. I'm not sure. For this to answer, I potentially would need to do quite a bit of research. It's a bit difficult, but I think there might be some parallels to some early ideas Tolkien had in some early writings, but like the idea of I think the Oathbreakers could have existed a bit longer, but I think not in this form as we find it in the Lord of the Rings, but like in a distantly related form that makes sense. In later text, the black stone of Erech brought from Numenor was not a palantir, but a palantir was preserved in the tower of Erech. In the present text and the subsequent revisions, on the other hand, the most natural interpretation of these words seemed to be that the stone of Erech was itself the palantir. So that's always very interesting, but yeah, nothing to do with the ghost, just to find this little section there. Yeah, it's really a cool plot idea, for sure. Okay, chat. What was the other thing we should talk about? The Barrow Wights was also requested, right? We also talked about Nandungorthep and so on. It was also kind of an interesting journey there. So, yeah, the Barrow Wights. We talked about briefly last time. But yeah, to kind of also conclude the Oathbreakers, what is interesting about them is that they really had, like, Tolkien had the idea that they had a temple and that they kind of, if you combine the texts, basically, okay, I unfortunately lost the line here again to read the section, as always. Not easy. But the oath that they broke was to fight against Sauron, and they must fight, therefore, if they want to fulfill Erech's sense. For at Erech there stands yet a black stone that was brought. It was set from Numenor by Isildur, and it was set upon a hill, and upon it the king of the mountains swore allegiance to him in the beginning of the realm of Gondor. But when Sauron returned and grew in might, Isildur summoned the men of the mountains to fulfill their oath, and they would not, for they had worshipped Sauron in the dark years. Here's the worshipping of Sauron. So they had worshipped Sauron, and Tolkien in this other text had the idea that they even had like some temples potentially for worshipping Sauron in the mountains and so on. So yeah, it's an interesting thing there. And for whatever reason, because okay, this Isildur guy is really powerful, we swear him allegiance, else we're in trouble. Considering the style of Tolkien, the ghosts were probably singing, smoking, and eating breakfast, yeah, for sure. But yeah, now moving on to the Barrow Wights. Kind of interesting. The Barrow Wights entered the Barrow Downs. try to currently trying to find this passage yet again. Which book is it, chat? It's Appendix A. Let me see, chat, if I find it. Sometimes finding these texts is just very difficult. In the days of Aglav, the plague came into Eriador. Yeah, I found it. It is said that the mounds of Turngorthad, that are the Barrow Downs, as the Barrow Downs were called of old, are very ancient, and that many were built in the days of the world of the First Age by the forefathers of the Edain, the Atanatari, as they are called. Forefathers of the Edain, before they crossed the Blue Mountains into Beleriand, which Lindon is all that now remains. Those hills were therefore revered by the Dunedain after their return, and there many of their lords and kings were buried. Some say that the mound in which the ring-bearer was imprisoned had been the grave of the last prince of Cardolan, who fell in the war 1409. So if we look at the map here, just to get the geography of the Barrow Downs right. So here, oops. So somewhere here is later Lindon. But in the First Age there was a landmass west of it called Beleriand. In Beleriand, these are the Blue Mountains, and the Edain, or the Atanatari, the fathers of men, they came from in 3 houses, or 4 houses to be precise. They came from Hildorien in the pretty much in the east. Let me just see, First Age. Somewhere here, Hildorien went all the way here, years later Lindon, to Beleriand in this land here. And on their way to this particular place, in the First Age, they came across these hills here, the Barrow Downs, and they, as we just read here in this text, said that these are very old and ancient, and they may have been built, these downs, in the days of old. Those hills were therefore revered. But those mounds were then used by the forefathers of the Edain, and the Dunedain later revered those places. And then in the Third Age, here we have Cardolan, the southern kingdom of the 3. Originally, everything here was one kingdom called Arnor, and then it split into 3 kingdoms because of dissensions between the heirs. And Cardolan used these mounds. It was still part. The point where all the three, so Arthedain, Cardolan, and Rhudaur, where they met was in Amon Sul, the Tower Hill. Here all the three kingdoms kind of met. You have the lake and Bree and so on. And yeah, here next to it are these hills. These Barrow Downs, these mounds. And at some point they were infested, you could say, by the Barrow-wites. Let me see if I find the needed information. Okay, it's maybe an unfinished tale, so I'm not 100% sure. There are multiple accounts where some information are written down about this particular time frame. I don't know, so cool. Welcome, Rico. Nice to see you. Yeah, it's kind of the process how these living dead came to be is kind of definitely interesting. Yeah, the Shire is pretty close. Also, Bree is insanely close to these Barrow Downs. They're in the chapter The Hunt for the Ring, I think. There's a subtext or a text called Other Versions of the Story. Not sure. We'll just see. But the Black Captain established a camp at Andras, where the Green Ray passed in a defile between the Barrow Downs and the South Downs. And from there, some others were sent to watch and patrol the eastern borders, while he himself visited the Barrow Downs. In notes on the movement of the Black Riders at the time, it is said that the Black Captain stayed there for some days, and the Barrowites were roused. And all things of evil spirit, hostile to elves and men, were on the watch with malice in the old forest and the Barrow Downs. So this is little information we get regarding the Barrowites and the Barrow Downs. The Barrow-wights were known by many names, and of old, so many tales have been told. All the main, but an outlier of its northern march. Hey Chatty Lumpkin. Hobbit stories of the Mulips were inspired by the Barrow-wights. That's a good idea, to be honest. And Tom Bombadil talks about the ponies, for they sniff danger ahead which you walk right into, and if they run to save themselves, then they run the right way. You must forgive them all, for though their hearts are faithful, to face fear of Barrow-wights is not what they were made for. See, here they come again, bring all their burdens. Okay, we have to go to Agileb the second. Okay, maybe I found it finally. A remnant of the faithful among the Dúnedain of Cardolan also held out in Tyrngorthad, the Barrow Downs, or took refuge in the forest behind. It is said that Angmar was for a time subdued by the elven folk coming from Lindon and from Rivendell, for Elrond brought help over the mountains out of Lórien. It was at this time that the Sturs that had dwelt in the angle between the Horwell and the Loudwater fled west and south because of the wars, and the dread of Angmar, and because the land and climb of Eriador, especially in the east, worsened and became unfriendly. Some returned to Wilderland and dwelt beside the Gladden, becoming a riverside people of fishers. In the days So this was what is written before. Then we have the plague that came to Eriador. It was said that at this time that an end came to the Dúnedain of Cardolan, and evil spirits out of Angmar and Hrodaur entered into the deserted mounds and dwelt there. So here is basically these evil spirits came and kind of drove them out, if that makes sense. I made a video about, it's a good question, Amazing Bad Boy. I made a video about if there's a difference between a werewolf and a warg. My conclusion is not really clear, to be honest, but you can make an argument that wargs are kind of either werewolves, or a further development or something like that compared to werewolves? Maybe I can link it in chat. For people who might be interested in it. Walks are lesser werewolves. Maybe. I think it's really, really like I remember the research doing for this. It was not very conclusive. But yeah, it's kind of an interesting detail, in my opinion. So, what I'm currently wondering about, there are multiple details, Chad. Is there a direct indication that the Witch King himself summoned the Barrow-wights? That's just something I would find interesting. Let me just get my Reader's Companion out really quick. That maybe helps us. Like in Hunt for the Ring, we learn that the Witch King goes there. So, I mean, it is a plausible conclusion. I'm just wondering if there is like a better text hint for that. Okay. There's another reference for Unfinished Tales, which I potentially have to look into. The Witch King had now a clearer understanding of the matter. He had known something of the country long ago in his wars with the Dunedain, and especially of the Tyrngorthad of Cardolan, the Barrow Downs. Now, the Barrow Downs, whose evil wights had been sent there by himself. This is the quote for it, actually. Seeing that his master suspected some move between the Shire and Rivendell, he saw also that Bree, the position of which he knew, would be an important point, at least for information. That's also note 19, which I also would love to look into. Lord of Rings, Appendix A. It was at this time during the Great Plague, which I know that the end came of the Dunedain. Okay, it's just a repeat of this plague. So very interesting, a detail indeed, chat. But yeah, that is a source for this particular. No, that is the source for it is definitely like in Appendix A. It just says. Hope I find it again. It just says basically the hobbits and all other people suffered greatly, but the plague lessened as it passed northward, and the northern parts of Arthedain were little affected. It was at this time that an end came of the Dunedain of Cardolan, and evil spirits out of Angmar and Rhudaur entered into the deserted mounds and dwelled there. It doesn't say that. I mean, they came out of Angmar and Rhudaur, which basically became like Rhudaur allied with Angmar and so on, and the line of Isildur was broken there, and the Hillmen took over, so the Witch King definitely had his influence there for sure. But interestingly, it does not say, yeah, the Witch King sent those. It could have been Sauron or whoever sending spirits to Angmar, and they would go through Angmar there. The implication that out of Angmar most likely, or makes it very plausible, that the Witch King is behind it, to be fair. Like, it's not directly stated, but indirectly. But interestingly, there is a direct quote that confirms this. And basically, it says, especially of the Tyrngorthad of Cardolan, now the Barrow Downs, whose evil wights had been sent there by himself, the Witch King. So very interesting that there is actually a direct quote or proof for this detail. Always like stuff like that. The Amon Ereb I also have to look it up. The Lonely Hill. Might be an addition by my good old friend Kierdan. We might have to ask him about it. I'm not sure if Kierdan is today here, though. Like, Kierdan made this map and usually has, like... There seems to be some connection to Forlindon there. In theory, it could have survived. A small circle appears in Forlindon on Tolkien's early draft map for The Lord of the Rings. Christopher Tolkien cannot explain this feature and notes that in his own 1943 redrawn map, the circular area is no longer present. It is possible to create a collage of the Beleriand and the Eriador maps to show a small circular area on the Third Age map, coinciding with the location of Amon Ereb. Note suggests that Amon Ereb may have been once thought to have survived the submersion of Beleriand, although there's no textual evidence for it. And other Tolkienists, such as Karen Fonstad, have reconciled the two maps in different ways. I just thought he had a good rap with the witch community. So yeah, very interesting detail. So what do we know about the Barrow-wights? So some might have think that these kings became the spirits, but that's not the case. It's clearly stated that the kings of Cardolan or the prince or whatever died there here in the Barrow Downs, and from Angmar and Trudawa, evil spirits came here, the Barrow-wights, and did something. They were evil spirits, but beyond that, we don't know anything about what was going on there with those people exactly, to be fair. Who's the creepiest hobbit? That's a good question, but is there any hobbit that's really creepy? Tolkien doesn't use the word spirits that often. That's for sure true. Evil spirits out of Angmar. Kind of interesting. Yeah, spirits from afar. He also describes for the Ents and so on. That's a good point. But here we of course have explicitly the evil spirit. The creepiest hobbit is Gollum. That's a really good answer. Yeah, maybe Gollum is the creepy. Yeah, I guess Gollum is a good call. It won't get much creepier than Gollum, I think. So is there other information about the Barrow-wights that we need to kind of cover? So yeah, very interesting. Just trying to find something out, but no, we simply don't know that much about our good old friends here. But in my opinion, definitely also always like a classic. I wish I could contribute a little bit more to them. It seems like they're very ancient. The mounts there in the Barrow Down mounts are there for a long time. However, being possessed or haunted by evil spirits is something that happened during the war with Angmar. So in the Third Age, relatively late. So these guys are pretty new to this place, to be fair. Beyond that, I think, I don't know, chat. Does anybody have a detail about the Barrow Wights that we might have missed here? If not, then we might move on, right? We could speculate on how the barrow blades work. It's difficult to speculate here. It seems like that these Dunedain had the ability to create swords that could actually interact in some way with the unseen. The song is interesting, yeah, that's for sure. Let me see. I find the right chapter, chat. Last time also looked a bit into this text. But the courage that had been awakened in him was now too strong. He could not leave his friend so easily. He wavered, groping in his pocket, and then fought with himself again, and as he did so, the arm crept nearer. Suddenly resolve hardened in him, and he seized a sword that lay beside him, and kneeling, he stooped low over the bodies of his companions. With what strength he had, he hewed at the crawling arm near the wrist, and the hand broke off. But at the same moment, the sword splintered up to the hilt. There was a shriek, and the light vanished. In the dark, there was a snarling noise. Frodo fell forward over Merry, and Merry's face felt cold. Like, the Barrow Wights could... I don't know if it's just my interpretation, but since they kind of also wear the gold stuff from the graves and so on, it feels like they kind of interact with the dead and with their burial gifts or whatever it's called in a strange way. At the same time, some of the weapons that the Dunedain had were actually able to fend off like a ghost-like being, like an evil spirit being like this in a way. So the question is, I don't know, would it just disconnect the physical part from the spiritual part? That makes sense. Was it enough to just destroy the physical part, and then, connection was kind of lost to the spirit? When Merry kind of wounds the Witch King with a barrow blade, we can read, "No other blade, not though mightier hands had wielded it, would have dealt that foe a wound so bitter, cleaving the undead flesh." And now comes breaking the spell that knit his unseen sinews to his will. I think here kind of lies one of the keys to understand how they kind of work, that they are, for whatever reason, able to break that spell, connect both with each other. I mean, Gandalf says to the others that they don't have a weapon that can actually hurt him. It seems like to hurt a Maiar, you definitely have to kind of look a bit, or you need a powerful weapon. Let's put it that way. And it seems like the Númenóreans and the Dúnedain were kind of able to provide weapons like this. How they did this, I can't tell. I don't know how this works exactly, but it's an interesting topic. Who told the Witch King that no man could kill him? Sauron? It's a good question. So yeah, very interesting, I think. A fortune cookie. Men of Anor have still known superior Númenórean magic, technology, and some elves in Rivendell and Miss London helped them with enchantments. Yeah, that's definitely plausible. Like, they are the most advanced entities. We talked briefly about the Stone of Erech. This, just imagine you live like in the, I don't know, Middle Ages, early Middle Ages or whatever, and you come across like a relatively tall, perfectly shaped sphere sticking or half sticking in the ground. Just forming something perfectly round is actually not that easy, especially at this size. And then it's also like a weird black stone, like a material you have not seen before. So it definitely has this feeling that it feels a bit spooky, but you definitely would kind of, I can see that people see it and fear it, because they can't understand how it was made, how it was brought there in the middle of the land, and so on. So it's an interesting artifact, and I said, like earlier writings kind of give the idea that it was supposed to be one of the Silmarillion at one point, not Silmarillion, one of the Palantiri at some point. Very interesting thing for sure. They even maintained or even developed this ability after the kingdom was tripartite. Yeah, for sure. There are many instances where medieval people saw remnants of ancient structure and interpret them as Mystical, yeah, for sure. So yeah, that was pretty interesting. The last section we have is like the Watcher and the Water. We talked briefly about it, or I already tried to answer this question, because there's simply so little written about this. Maybe we can just read this here. Thither I came at last to the uttermost foundation of stone. He was with me still, the Balrog. His fire was quenched, but now he was a thing of slime, stronger than a strangling snake. We fought far under the living earth, where time is not counted. Ever he clutched me, and ever I hewed him, till at last he fled into the dark tunnels. They were not made by Durin's foe, Gimli son of Glóin. Far, far below the deepest delvings of the dwarfs, the world is gnawed by nameless things. Even Sauron knows them not, they are older than he. Now I have walked there, but I will bring no report to darken the light of the day. In that despair my enemy was my only hope, and I pursued him, clutching at his wheel. Thus he brought me back at last to the secret ways of Khazad-dûm. He knew them all. Ever up now he went, until we came to the endless stair. Long has that been lost, said Gimli. Many have said that it was never made, save in legend, but others say that it was destroyed. It was made, and it had not been destroyed, said Gandalf. From the lowest dungeons to the highest peak it climbed, ascending in unbroken spiral in many thousand steps, until it issued at last in Durin's tower, carved in the living rock of Zirak-Sigil, the pinnacle of the Silvertine. So that's the passage with the nameless things. And we can speculate about. Not sure if you like the idea. I kind of think it's not a. It's kind of a cool theory. But maybe I'm alone with this opinion. I'm not sure. I have a picture of the Watcher and the Water. Could this be one of the nameless things? Was it drawn by the energy of the ring, or was it hired, so to say, by Sauron? If that was the case, then Sauron, of course, had to know about the nameless things. But it is in Moria, it's relatively close, so we could make an argument. Well, it might pass. Tonight we call it supper. That's the Rings of Power reference, right? How do the kings become ring wraiths? Well, they just have to wear their rings of power. That's the 9 rings, and then over time they fade. They use it and try to become invisible at times, and at some point they won't turn visible anymore. They stay there in the wraith world and get under the will of Sauron. That's, I think, the most dangerous part in this regard. Okay, chat. I have to admit, I'm slowly getting too tired for this. Like my concentration is kind of depleted heavily. It was a very long day for me. So I have to slowly wrap it up, unfortunately. I would love to talk to you longer about the lore, but I'm really, really tired. No, I think we don't really know this, how it became like this. All we know is that when I think it was just to answer the question, Ori noted it. Oin it was. He tried to escape and he was killed by the Watcher, I think, in the water, right? And the others then fled back. So I assume that the Watcher in the water was already there at the time of Balin's try to retake Moria for his friends. And this was 2990 to 95, I think, if I remember the timeline correctly. So a few years before. So to this point, it seems like, well, there was already water and a Watcher. How this was created exactly and when, I think we don't know exactly. I know it was potentially a shorter stream today for you in direct comparison to the absurd lengths we have streamed here in the past. But I started very late already from my perspective. It's like 1:30 already in my time zones. And like I said, I'm really tired. Is there anything spooky we have forgotten? I mean, there are more topics. We had the dead marshes, but there's a video on my channel about the dead marshes. So if you want to learn more about those, feel free to check that out. The dead marshes are also kind of a special case, in my opinion. The films, they seem more like spirits, phantoms in the water, and so on. I think in the book, you get slight hints in this direction, but you could also argue it's like a hallucination due to the swamp gas or whatever. Thank you, much appreciated. Well, it's still there. Well, I still need to and there are the credits already. Credits, what is the date of today? Recently updated, so thank you so much, people, for the support on Patreon, on the memberships here on this channel, on the others. Much appreciated for this as well. I know it was a shorter stream today, which I guess feels a bit unfortunate for some people for sure, but well, this is available as a VOD. If you missed something, you can maybe check it out later. There might be a lot of ad breaks in between because I have to reduce them a bit. But to do so, it is necessary that it is definitely necessary that the video processes one time, then I can remove it. I will do this tomorrow anyway, so there's that. Yeah, huge shout outs to all the supporters. This is basically everything from Twitch subscriptions and memberships on YouTube and Patreon and so on. and people who have like put super thanks or whatever here into the chat and whatever. So much appreciated. Thank you all for your support. It's really much appreciated. And yeah, we slowly wrap it up then. I hope we kind of covered some of the spooky things. I'm a bit sorry that we got stuck a bit at this Baldur section there. I could swear there was like more information about this somewhere, but maybe I misremembered it. Oh, the statues of Kiris Ungola underreported. Yeah, that for sure as well. I'm sure that I'm that handsome, to be honest. He must be the brain. Yeah, tomorrow, Halloween-wise, content-wise, I plan at least on the German channel to. I'm not sure if I might able to complete, but maybe we'll play a bit of Resident Evil 2 remake on the German Twitch and games channel. Could think about maybe playing it in English, but I don't know. And I also will hope I can finish the Elden Ring guide tomorrow. We're almost done editing, and when it's done, I can upload it. But it's like a really long video. Nobody will watch a guide this long, so. But yeah, it's I think a good video at the end. My Halloween costume. Well, that's a good question. Like I said at the beginning, like when in my younger days, Halloween was absolutely no thing in Germany. Like only in some regions. So as a result, I'm to this day not that deep into Halloween, to be honest. It's just something that in recent year, I would say in the last 15 years or so, kind of got bigger and bigger, and now it's also like a thing in Germany. But for I wouldn't say us older folks, it's interestingly not that interesting. I know it's a huge thing in the United States and UK and so on, but not that much here. So as a result, I usually like in let's put it that way. My bubble, it's not really celebrated simply. But I find it, even though I find it kind of fascinating. But it's also kind of interesting. We have, of course, there is the Walpurgisnacht, but that's at a completely different day. I think it's what is it, 30th of April or something like that. So we're in the wrong time for this. But that was also never really a spectacle or something that was much celebrated in my bubble, so to say. And the whole Halloween thing in its origins seems to be seems to be a bit, I don't know, the Celts, for example, had it. I'm not sure how deeply rooted it was also in the ancient Germanic traditions. I think there's even to this day still debate if where the exact origin of this thing is. Walpurgisnacht is at the halfway point between the spring equinox and the summer solstice, whereas Halloween is the halfway point between the autumn equinox. So it's basically the same fest, just at the other side of the calendar, right? Also, Storyteller, nice to see you. I'm falling asleep to this from the Netherlands. I wish you a good night and sleep very well. So yeah, it's kind of, I think it's interesting. Let's pretend it was also a thing at some point, not like this, in look at some clever Halloween costumes online. People are so creative, especially when decorate their houses. Yeah, for sure. They put a smile on face. I mean, it's an awesome idea, like having a costume and celebrating this and so on. It's in this way really fascinating that it kind of had this huge impact in, for example, in the United States, but also, of course, in others, and in its origin, like just from the perspective of Germans, let's pretend that in the past, in ancient times, there is kind of also a feast or whatever, a celebration of this particular point in the year, and then for a long time it was basically gone, and went then, I don't know, it spread in a way, of course, also UK and so on. Like I said, if it has also Celtic roots and so on, then I guess the story is a bit more complicated than this historically, but just from our perspective, it's like, okay, it went to the United States, and then due to their growth and massive cultural influence, it kind of returned. I've always find this kind of funny, how, yeah, sometimes these perceptions change, and how like an idea like this can kind of come back centuries later. That's kind of fascinating. Fun fact, Europe had jack-o'-lanterns before they had pumpkins, because pumpkins are from America. Europeans made them out of turnips. They were terrifying. That's actually a good point. History of the pumpkin. The oldest evidence of the pumpkin is pumpkin fragments found in Mexico that are dated between 7,000 and 5,500 before Christ, so BC. Pumpkins and other squash species alongside maize and beans feature in the Three Sisters method of companion planting practiced by many North American indigenous societies. However, larger modern pumpkin cultivars are typically excluded as their weight may damage the other crops. Second, within decades after Europe began colonizing North America, illustrations of pumpkins similar to the modern cultivars small sugar pumpkin and Connecticut field pumpkin were published in Europe. So that's pretty fascinating. So you're right. Must have used other material for this. My dog nearly died when we walked around a corner and a totally familiar house suddenly had this decorations of a skeleton climbing out of the ground. It was funny. Couldn't stop laughing. Hopefully Michael Myers didn't travel back with the Halloween spectrum. Yeah, I hope so as well. Did you know that 1 year ago I followed you and that is a bit smelly to me? Well, but I thank you for your I always forget the word for Treue. Loyalty over such a long time. Congratulations for your 1 year anniversary following me here in my quest of content creation. Much appreciate. Thanks for the support, Baldur. Yeah, I assume you would kind of references. This row of a child-sized figure in front of her and she's terrified. Yeah, I mean, can kind of understand this. Nazgul Halloween is at Halloween is the best costume. That's actually kind of a cool thing. Like a cool custom, I think, as well. I saw one family bought several skeletons and posts them in hilariously, playing Twister even with the baby and dog, including the cat, in control of the spin. Okay, that sounds really funny, to be honest. Yeah, some people really have very creative ideas on how to do things, for sure. But yeah, it's getting late, chat. I really have to go to sleep. I'm really tired. And I'm kind of glad I managed to get the stream going today. Even though it was a surprise stream, I would have loved to schedule it, but I hoped I would finish my video today. And I was just working, and it was getting later and later. And then I thought, okay, if I want to stream today, I have to end editing now and prepare the stream. And so it happened. I hoped I would have been done, I don't know, late afternoon at least. So I could kind of warn you people for a moment that the stream would be coming up. But I am glad that so many of you still could catch the stream. And I hope you enjoyed this, I don't know, special Halloween pre-Halloween lore stream. had good questions, even though I skipped also a lot of questions. A bit sorry for also the struggle there when we talked about finding more information about the Prince Baldur, son of Brego. I always have to think how this guy is called. Baldur. Yeah, that's his name. Okay. Also, yeah, glad you people enjoyed this. If you haven't pressed the like button yet, this happens to the best in the world. Listen to it on the drive back from work. Awesome. If you haven't pressed the like button yet, feel free to press this, leave a comment, and I don't know, subscribe if you aren't subscribed yet, and so on. There's also like the, let's call it the new lore channel, and I recently uploaded a new video there, which is an old video, it's just re-uploads. And it's the Who is Galadriel video. So if you haven't seen that, it's a pretty good video in my opinion. Gives a really good overview. You can post it in chat. Then you also have directly the link to the new channel. I think most people here in chat know about it anyway, so don't worry too much about it. I did some slight re-edits there. Galadriel, never heard of her. So there's that. I'm thinking about, yeah, the next video re-upload on the channel will be the part 2 of this video, which also existed here on this channel originally. So re-uploaded there, and that will be the next re-upload, because currently I don't have the time to produce a new lore video, which I will start as soon as I'm done with this video, and maybe, like I said, want to do like another video here and there, but the day only has 24 hours. That's always a problem, and a good lore video takes some time. But Who's Elrond, I still want to finish that, so that is something I plan on doing in November. I hope it works out. Then there will be potentially also the full version with all the content in it. Curious how this will work out at the end. And let me think, is there anything other? Can wait for all the amazing and detailed lore you do for Galadriel in the Second Age. Yeah, we still have to do part 3 about the Second Age. That will be really tough to make, because 500, not 500, but 3-4 different versions exist of every detail. But I would like to finish with Elrond first. Also, somebody suggested that I have a video like the Lord of Rings, like kind of a beginner's guide or something. I thought, well, yeah, the re-uploading the beginner's guide to the new channel might also be a good idea. So we might also do that at some point, but I guess next week is the new Galadriel video. And yeah, then at some point there will be the watch parties for the Lord of the Rings films and the Hobbit films and so on. So stay tuned for this as well. And I guess that's everything I have to say for now. Again, huge shout outs and thanks for all your support, be it pressing the like button and so on. Much appreciated. And I hope, yeah, that lore-wise things turn a bit better in the future. Like currently it's really not going too well, to be honest, which is a bit sad. Now currently my channel generates not good views, to be honest, but we will see. So again, thank you for watching, and see you people next time. Goodbye. Also, happy Halloween to everybody. Have a nice celebration, and see you people, yeah, next time. Goodbye.